So my name is Christina Ferrari, and I'll be presenting with my colleague Anna Standish on the topic of keeping the conversation going and rebuilding a sense of staff community online, especially during a global pandemic. So what we'll speak to today, we'll start out with who we are, our goals, and the tools at hand, followed by how it's going so far and what comes next. Once again, I'm Christina, and my colleague is Anna, and we are both library technicians with George Brown College. Communicating effectively is a key aspect in both of our roles, and this folds in nicely with our goals. So our goals are to continue with our regular roles of supporting and improving on digital tools for team communication, while also finding new ways to use our digital skills to facilitate staff communication and community building online. And this manifested from a direct desire to stay connected ourselves. So we decided to utilize the tools we already have for this purpose, and those tools are Microsoft Outlook, SharePoint, and Teams. The trouble with Outlook is something that most people can relate to. The sheer amount of emails can become overwhelming. This communication style is ill-suited for informal group discussion and open-ended conversations. So what we did was capture attention via short, to-the-point calls of action and provide links to the relevant page or conversation in SharePoint and Teams. So let's take a look at SharePoint. This platform is relatively new to the Library Learning Commons, with a custom site having been designed specifically for our needs, phased into use just this year. So Anna and I decided to use the news feature to connect with colleagues, as well as put out a call for submissions and opinions on relevant topics. We created information hubs for specific areas of the library, including resource pages and statistics. And all of a sudden, something that did exist when this transition was beginning now holds a lot more weight. Microsoft Teams is something we did not use at all before this. And during this transition, we helped create the LLC staff team and channels and promoted knowledge sharing, with credit to librarians Andrea Hall and Jinwei Zhang. With Teams, our goal is to cultivate space for informal and social interactions, as well as information sharing. And now over to Anna for how it's going so far.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, so how is it going? First, what's worked for us? Generally, we found that the most successful activities had a very low bar to engagement, they had personal relevance, and either didn't add to existing workloads or filled the knowledge gap. So right off the bat, almost in the first week after we all went to isolation, we did a survey on the new reference desk design that the library was having made. We got quite a few votes, a large amount of engagement, and it was very successful, I think, largely because all people had to do was vote, and it gave people an opportunity to have a say in the design of their work environment and how they wanted to see the library reference services represented. Our reference training sessions on Teams were quite successful as well. We had about 6 sessions so far with about 27 participants per session. These got a lot of positive feedback and were again very successful, I think, because they directly addressed the current needs of our staff because of the increase in who was on Ask On. Christina and I also hosted a virtual break room chat in Teams. It's the first of what we hope to be many. We got about 16 people participating, with some pets featured as well. We scheduled it for 30 minutes, but it lasted for a whole hour, which really spoke to the need that we were filling. As for how we were using Outlook, I'd say our email bumps were moderately successful. There was sort of mixed success in how much we could use those to direct attention onto other platforms and generate activity there, but they were successful in our secondary aims to minimize inbox clutter. All right. So some challenges that we have faced. Active participation outside of specific organized events does remain fairly low. So in our Teams channel, we have about 42 total users, but only about half of them are active, and the vast majority of posts are still made by the same 3 to 5 people. Why might this be? I want to say, first of all, we shouldn't assume that it is a problem, because it is only a problem if staff want to participate, but for whatever reason, they're not comfortable doing so. So further research is required, and we need to reach out more to find out if there is actually a need beyond what we can see through the lens of our own roles. Challenges we can actually speak to. Well, it's difficult to establish new communication norms. That's a truism, especially for a sudden unplanned pivot to online-only communications with a team with very strong face-to-face conventions. I mean that in a very good way, to be clear, especially most of all during a pandemic. It's also quite a lot to ask staff to learn new technologies while they're remote without any in-person help. And I think most importantly of all, it's important to remember that community building is organic and it can't be forced. So development of that can't be top down, and we really just need to give ourselves time and experience for new conventions to become established. So speaking of time, what's next for us? We're going to continue hosting the virtual break room. We're going to make conscious choices to be visible and contribute to conversations. We're going to keep trying to create a natural flow between platforms depending on those platforms' individual strengths. We're going to expand into new areas. For instance, we're hoping to contribute some resources from library staff to the @GBC newsletter, which goes out to George Brown staff in general. And of course, we have to listen, we have to reach out to identify what barriers might be keeping staff isolated. And above all, just keep thinking up new ideas and trying new things. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you very much for listening.